The Call of Duty Zombie saga first began as a swing in the dark. From its humble beginnings as a side reward for completing the campaign of World at War, the Nazi Zombies game mode quickly skyrocketed into one of the most popular game modes of all time, being a large proponent of Call of Duty's financial success. It is still religiously played to this day, and is even the reason for older iterations of COD currently outselling the new ones. Today on OccultPod, we discuss the esoteric aspects of this legendary game. Topics ranging from ancient civilizations to Nazi conspiracies to UFOs and the Manhattan Project. The zombie storyline drops us across different timelines and loves to litter in clues and hints about a bigger jigsaw puzzle which is referred to as the zombies' chronorium. These puzzle pieces have come to be known as Easter eggs, some being more obvious and some being absolute head-scratchers, often containing reference to mythology or conspiracy lore. Were the writers of the storyline, people like Jason Blundell and Jimmy Zielinski, conscious of the esoteric, being guided by some off-Earth entity, or just having fun? Listen to us discuss on today's episode of the OccultPod.
Let's go. We're back. This time we're looking at Call of Duty Zombies. And as you can see behind us, we've got zombies looking to attack us. You know.
Not phased.
Yeah, I'm not phased at all, even though there's a Nazi zombie behind me. You know, I think Hitler's rising from the dead to come and attack me. But
bro, he's about to fucking eat you.
Yeah. But yeah, man. Adolf, don't kill me. You know, I'm no threat to your kind. The Aryan race, I'm not Aryan. But hey, let's touch on the whole storyline of Call of Duty. And in the beginning was the ether. Now, I'm not going to lie to you, the ether, when the first time I heard of that, I thought there's so many different things surrounding the ether. According to the Platonic solids, it is the fifth element, and that represents the universe. In Greek myth, it supposedly represents heaven, or what they call the upper sky. And yeah, you just see it a lot in symbolism with the Ethernet, with the internet, and Ethereum with cryptocurrency. So what is so special about the ether?
Is that a question? You're asking me that as a question?
Yeah, as a question.
Yeah. To be fair, I'm not 100% sure. Like on the ether, I think it's representative of like another dimension in it, like a pocket dimension that's basically outside of the dimension, the reality that we live in. So the whole premise of the zombie storyline, if anyone's actually had the capacity to sit down and listen to the entirety of the storyline, which is very long and very convoluted, but the general premise is that there's like multiple dimensions that we can jump in and out of, pocket dimensions, jumping through portals, through teleports and things like that. It started out as a much simpler storyline, however it developed over time, started involving aliens and things like that, so I think it just continued and spiraled. But yeah, the connection to the ether, I think it's representative of like different dimensions and dimensions that are existing currently alongside ours, and like being able to jump through timelines and things like that and reach different destinations through the ether. And there's other beings and things that live beyond our scope of reality. So in Zombies Chronorium, as it's called, there's the Apothecans and the Gatekeepers, who are the two basically rival enemies which start the Great War between, and they're essentially the gatekeepers of reality and of like the ether and stuff like that, but they come from the ether. And I think, as we've touched on this podcast in the past, we talked about like the archons and things like that, and I think they'd be a similar sort of idea to those, where they have dominion and control over the people of this reality, and they can jump in wherever they like and however they want. And there's the Apothecans, which are essentially the bad gatekeepers who have been turned from gatekeepers into Apothecans due to corruption, and then there's gatekeepers that are good. So I think you could argue that it's quite similar to the idea that there are beings living like beyond this reality in the ether, wherever, that would have good intentions and bad intentions and can manipulate you, things like that.
Yeah, for sure, because I know in the storyline that the Keepers created a device known as the summoning key to alter reality and used the ether to manipulate this reality. I mean, it also makes sense because in Greek myth, according to all picked cosmology, ether is the child of Kronos, whoever. So, and obviously we know that Kronos is Satan, which obviously in the Bible parallels Satan is God of this world. So, you know, the Keepers, for me, like you touched on earlier with the Archons in Gnosticism, they are perhaps similar, if not the same type of entity, just in a different format. You know, the COD developers, Activision, are very intelligent with their storylines. I mean, obviously, they're being used by the supernatural to create this almost storyline in Call of Duty, essentially, of how mankind is formed.
Yeah, I think they've definitely done the research. Like the developers of the CODs on this saga almost seem to be too close to the truth. Like if you go into some deep truths about Gnosticism and things like that, and just about general conspiracy theories, they seem to be absolutely laden through with these ideas and concepts that, like, I feel like now are coming to the forefront of like more collective thought. But previously, like no one would have had any idea what they were talking about. So I think the zombies community is such like a timeless community. Obviously, like you're not a bigger part of it as me, which isn't a bad thing. I'm not saying that necessarily, but like in terms of like playing it and things like that, you go through the storyline and it developed and it developed and it's still developing today because there was so much attention to detail within the storyline that meant there's just continuous amounts of work and things you can look into that are still undiscovered. Like today, we're still discovering new things about the like different Easter eggs and things and information that was laden into the storyline that we didn't even notice like 10 years ago. And I think that's the reason why it's so timeless and such an interesting like game to play. But yeah, obviously, as you say, I think the developers did have a lot of intelligence, a lot of nous, and yeah, they possibly could have been manipulated to create these storylines, which is actually quite interesting because obviously like a lot of the storyline of Cops Onwards is about people being manipulated to do things in like for what they think is the greater good, but obviously it's not. So you have like the Shadow Man, Dr. Monty, who basically manipulate the crews into doing things to follow through with their agenda, and it's not necessarily a good thing or a bad thing. You have like two sides of the same coin, essentially. Quite interesting.
Yeah, exactly. Just like how this reality works with the politics and the right v left, you know. So that's an interesting parallel. And also, as if I go further into the storyline, I noticed that they said that in the tombs it contained an element called 115, element 115. And what's pretty interesting, just before starting this, I looked into it, and in the periodic table, the 115th element is obviously Moscovian. I say obviously, but the element is called Moscovian, if I said it right. And obviously that's named after the city of Moscow in Russia. And then you go back to Nazi zombies and World War II. So it's just all connected there. Obviously the Germans lost in Russia, which ultimately was the demise of the Axis.
Yeah, 100%. And I like the whole idea of the zombie storyline is kicked off by the fact that the Germans are working on like secret technology to then create something that would. So it's basically started from a super soldier serum that they wanted to create like the Captain America sort of story. So yeah, it would be like to do with the war between. That's where it all started off with the war, Second World War, because it stems from Call of Duty World War, which is based on the Second World War. And yeah. No, I think that is a really interesting fact. I didn't even think about that. So whether that was the fact that the developers realised that and were like, yeah, let's put this in as a little Easter egg, or it was manipulation. They thought maybe element 115 just sounds like a cool element, and then it just so happens to be quite synchronistical, and it turns out that is representative of Moscow. And obviously we see the shit that's happened with Russia like right now with the potential of World War III, and it's all playing out at the same time. But yeah, so actually the whole premise of the zombie storyline getting kicked off is based on a conspiracy theory called Die Glocke. So Die Glocke was during the Second World War. Apparently, the Nazis basically had a separate research facility and group where they want to create wonder weapons and super soldiers. So the idea is that Edward Richtofen, who is one of the main characters, one of the main protagonists in the zombie storyline, who is probably the protagonist, is a Nazi scientist, and he wants to create like super soldiers, and is working on teleportation, and eventually they end up creating zombies from the teleportation, which goes wrong, which actually has some tie into true stories, such as like the Philadelphia experiment. I'm not sure if you've heard of that before.
No.
Like during the Second World War, they were apparently working on teleportation and cloaking devices. So they wanted to hide naval ships, and apparently one of them was successful. However, it ended up. I think there's a TV show at the minute which is along the same lines as this theory. I think Sylvia mentioned it to us. It was, I can't remember what it's called, but it's on Netflix. Yeah, so essentially they teleport this ship, and it comes back. It turns up in a completely different place, so it teleports essentially. But all the crew members, a load of them are missing, and some of them have like been melded into the metal of the ship, and then some of them are like spontaneously combusting, and some of them are like just running, but like they're not running anywhere, but they're running really fast. It's really odd. So it's like they've almost entered this pocket dimension, come in and out. So it's sort of like the teleportation idea. But that's where the whole like Nazi zombies storyline stems from, is that it's a teleportation experiment that's gone wrong and then created these super soldiers that are actually zombies.
Yeah, I actually watched a bit of that TV show that Sylvie talked about. It's called 1899, and I got bored of it. So yeah, but like, but the ship that was the ship that got missing was the ship's called Prometheus.
Yeah.
Basically, he's one of the titans that stole the fire from the gods and was sent to Tartarus. Well, was he sent to Tartarus? No, but he was basically chained, and it's pretty interesting with Prometheus, the titans, and Kronos. And obviously, last episode you mentioned that one of the maps in COD is called Olympia, and of course
it's called Nine. Called Nine, but it's based in ancient Egypt. Yeah, it's like an Olympian theater that you're in. You're in like a gladiator's ring with a load of the gods and stuff like that. You're surrounded by Zeus and Kronos and things like that.
Fair enough.
But yeah, there's always those sort of tie-ins. Like later in the storyline, so basically there's a character called Dr. Maxis, and he has a mistress, or not a mistress, a wife called Sophia, but Sophia dies. So what he does is he uploads her consciousness into an AI and calls it Sophia, which is quite interesting because obviously you have the AIs at the minute called Sophia. Like the first AI that was created, the first artificial intelligence that was brought to life was called Sophia. So you have that tie-in. I think it was happening along the same time as the zombie map came out, but it was also quite like eerie, like they chose that specifically. And also, so there's an Easter egg on the map where Sophia shows up, and you have to input a code into Sophia to get her to like help you and assist you. And the code is Kronos, so obviously you have that tie into Saturn there. And there's also a lot of like cube symbolism throughout the storyline, a lot of references to the Illuminati and things like that. So I think like black cubes and Saturn, obviously in Saturn, you have a lot of links there. And I think to a degree the writers must have been semi-conscious of what was going on there.
Absolutely. I mean, it's not like they thought, I'm just going to put random cubes in a game and not know what it means. Of course they know, but like it's more deeper than the surface level. Just going back to the beginning and the tombs, of course, we mentioned earlier that, what was it, before we started, the Gavonese tube, where the Easter egg in Origins was found in France, and it highlights as well that in those carvings, scholars have researched that the carvings shown in the tomb that are shown in zombies as well are mathematical equations that calculate the days of the year and also the pi constant. So it's pretty crazy how that's all enticed and connected together in real life and in Call of Duty.
Yeah, so how like it's almost like it's even tied into our own podcast when we were talking about Graham Hancock and a few episodes back. And I was doing my impression of Graham Hancock and how it's tied into these ancient civilizations, and they have all these references to ancient civilizations. So, like one of them, obviously, they have the what's it called, the Gavernese tomb in France, which is actually a real megalith where you can go in and it's got all these symbols and stuff, like you said, like the fingerprints, and then they've took them and then used them as a template for the map origins when you go underground. It's like they've clearly done some digging into things to try and make this storyline work to a degree that is quite deep and quite there's a lot of information going into it where you're thinking about it and you're thinking things through. But a lot of references to ancient civilizations that are more advanced than us. Because obviously, like, this happened apparently, so we're told by archaeologists, modern archaeologists, we're told that it was about 5,000 years ago. But I think Graham Hancock would argue that this occurred during the Younger Dryas. So you have all these symbols and stuff like that obviously represents the pie. It's like, why have they used that sort of information to translate it into Nazi zombies and brought it down? And then obviously you have, I'm not sure if you research into this, so as well, there's a map called Shangri-La, which is heavily rumored at also occurring on Mars. And there's a lot of references to the fact that an ancient civilization used to live on the map, and they're called the Vrilia. So you have a lot of references to ancient civilizations that live on Mars and things like that. It's just very interesting. So part of the reason people think it was on Mars is because I give credit to certain YouTubers such as like Glitching Green and things like that. But if you look at the moon, so during like an Easter egg phase on the map Shangri-La, if you look in at the moon, it's a different moon that's in the sky during the eclipse, and that moon is, if you look and compare it to a different moon, it's the moon of Phobos, which is one of Mars's moons. So you have Phobos and Deimos, and the moon that's in the sky at that moment is Phobos. So obviously people then believe that it is located on Mars, and then that would tie into the idea that there were also civilizations living on Mars at the time. It's like the constant between those two points. And then you have all these references to teleportation devices within the game, like the Call of Duty and stuff, like Richtof and teleporting himself to the moon and things like that. So, and I remember like a few years ago looking into research about how pyramids and things like that are actually teleportation devices, or were teleportation devices to move from like planet to planet. So you can move from Earth to Mars and things like that, and back and forth. And that's why you have like people saying there's pyramids on Mars and things like that. And obviously the MPDs in the Call of Duty Chronorium and the Zombies Chronorium are pyramid formed. So is it like, did the writers know what they were doing with that as well? It's like it's very weird. I feel like they must have done a lot of digging and research into conspiracy theories to be able to conjure up all this information and bring it full circle.
Definitely. Like, just going back to the Mars connection, like it makes sense actually when you talked about Mars and the moon, because when there's a blood moon eclipse, the moon turns red in a sense. So it does look like Mars, which is crazy. Then you have the movie, the kids film Turning Red, which was all predictive programming based on the lunar eclipse. You also have Moonfall, which is pretty interesting. Again, is that just another form of predictive programming that the moon is going to fall and Mars is the way to go? Is that why Elon Musk is looking at sending people to Mars in the future? Whether you believe Mars is real or not, I mean, I know there's been many people that have, identified that the true Mars that they're saying, the fake one anyway, is in Devon Island somewhere in Alaska or somewhere. But yeah, besides that, Elon Musk trying to send people in Mars is pretty interesting based on what you said about the ancient civilizations perhaps living in Mars. Is it a case of returning back home?
Possibly. Well, I remember reading into the theory a while ago, and it was talking about how the civilization does still exist there. However, they've gone underground. They've like moved under the earth. So if you have a look at some videos and some pictures and things like that, it looks like there are remnants of like cities on the surface of Mars. So there was the theory that they became under war and they had to move underground at the time, like they've had to leave the surface of the planet, and that's why they've moved underground. So I'm not sure why they'd have to, like why today we are being pushed towards going to Mars. Do you know what I mean? It just feels like it's a bit weird, a bit false. I think there is something going on. I think it's interesting as well. It sort of lends into the zombie storyline idea of like a cycle, like a cyclical repetition of the same things happening over and over again within like the same dimension. And I think that could be part of the reason that we're seeing these things happen again. Like perhaps we already existed on Mars, and then we're going back again to repeat the cycle and live there, and then something will happen on Mars. We'll have to move, and then like it's just a constant repetition. It sort of lends into like the Phoenix cycle that is talked about by Jason Bashir's, where he's talking about how every few hundred years there's a reset cycle. Every 138 years we have the Phoenix cycle, and then every 522 you have the destruction of Earth, and you just start the cycle again and again and again. That could be exactly what's happening. And it's actually interesting because I remember reading about the Tunguska event. So that happened in 1908, I believe. And that's actually referenced in the zombie storyline. So the Tunguska event, are you familiar with the Tunguska event?
No, well, I'm sure I can add in some bits based on what you said.
So it was basically in 1908, there was a explosion over a woodland area in Siberia, in Tunguska. And it was basically of atomic bomb size, but about 5 times the power. Thankfully, there was no one near. There was no inhabitants or anything like that in the near vicinity. But it was basically just wiped out like a whole piece of land. You could probably find it online. But like today, it's a mystery as to why that happened. So in the zombie storyline, they talk about how this is like so a meteor came down at the time, because obviously element 115 comes from the sky, and that's come down. It's landed on the Earth, and it's landed in the Tunguska River. And that's how basically like the element 115 is first discovered. Like it starts an outbreak basically in that area, like the Japanese area. But yeah, no, it's very interesting. So in terms of Jason Bashir's, he believed like it was part of like the start of the meteor shower that we would see with like a Phoenix event, and that was just like one part of it. And also it lends into like the Graham Hancock theory of like the Taurian meteor stream and going through that, and then we'd have these like broken up pieces of rubble and stuff coming and striking the earth and like causing this great big explosion, like atomic size. So yeah, I think that's quite interesting, like a nice connection there between like this and the Phoenix events and things like that.
Yeah, it's like even you look into like nuclear bombs or the way they're shaped. Like Graham Hancock talks about the fact that these comets look. He believes that the snakes, the serpents that were shown by ancient civilizations were comets, and even looking at nuclear bombs, the shape, length, the shape, size is kind of similar. Not saying it's fully a snake, but the way it's positioned, it kind of does feel similar, in my opinion. And I think that's just a strange connection, but the ancients obviously knew something.
Very true. And to tie him back to Mars as well, I think my dad first told me this theory, but there is actually a theory. I think there's a book on it as well, basically about the ancient civilization that lives on Mars. And the reason that Mars is a wasteland today, obviously, is just a theory, but the reason that Mars is a wasteland today is because there was nuclear war there. So, like, human civilization did actually exist there, but there was a nuclear war, and that's the reason it looks like it is like it does today, because it just looks like a barren wasteland that's been completely destroyed. It looks inhabitable. So there's probably nuclear fallout there at some point. That ties back into a lot of the zombie storyline as well, because there's a lot of references to nukes and nuclear bombs and things like that further into the storyline with maps like Nuketown. And obviously, have you heard of the map Nuketown?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Everyone knows the map Nuketown. Even if you've not played like any COD, you know that Nuketown's a map on COD. But yeah, obviously, like it's set up as like a facility site in New Mexico in the Trinity site. There is actually quite a bit of information like tied together with this which is actually quite interesting. So obviously, you have the Manhattan Project, which occurred in 1947 when they were trying to work out how to, not 1947, like in the early 1940s, when you had Oppenheimer working on the first nuclear bomb to try and work out how to basically, you've got the film coming out, that'll explain to you what happened with the Oppenheimer situation, but essentially they were trying to create the nuclear bomb. And that occurred near Area 51 in Nevada. And obviously you have like a lot of times with UFOs, like that area is supposed to be one of the highest reported areas of seeing UFOs and things like that. It's like Nevada, like out in the sticks. And it also happens to be the area that there was a lot of nuclear testing at the time. I think with the zombie storyline, they were actually going for like a sort of tie-in with the zombies and the nukes and the aliens and things like that. Because you can see that with like the introduction of the Majestic 12 into the storyline. So the Majestic 12 is actually quite a commonplace conspiracy theory that surrounds the idea that there was basically a group of 12 like highly ranked officials and things like that that were brought together as a way to monitor alien activity. So they were first started off looking at the Roswell impact, which occurred previous to the war, and they were like studying alien warcraft and stuff, alien craft and things like that. And that's brought into the storyline quite a bit, into the zombie storyline, which is quite fascinating. But like in terms of the nuclear testing, one of the Majestic 12 theories is that obviously the aliens were like working hand in hand with the like people creating the nukes because they didn't want them to do anything that was too bad and would destroy the Earth, because potentially that's already happened before on a different planet. So what if that is Mars? Like what if it's just an ancient, more advanced civilization that's going to inform us that like nuclear warfare isn't the type of thing to do? It's just all these different theories. But to link into the Trinity, like the Trinity side where the bombing and things like that with the nuclear testing, and to the zombie storyline, I actually found like quite a weird connection with that and JFK. So in one of the first rooms on the first map on Black Ops 1 on Kino de Tur, for people that know it, there's a writing on the floor that says Manhattan down. And obviously the nuclear testing was called the Manhattan Project. That's what its code name was. And it was at the Trinity site in New Mexico, which is actually quite interesting because JFK, his assassination occurred at the Trinity River. Also, it occurred on the 33rd parallel. The Trinity site was on the 33rd parallel. And with JFK, you had the blame being put onto 3 tramps. And it also occurred at the Dallas Triple Underpass. So you have all these weird like 33 sinks and things like that. There was always like a 33. And there was also rumours that there were 2 people of the occult that were involved in the Manhattan Project. You had Crowley and you had Jack Parsons as well. So this was just like a rumor. But basically, they were trying to summon like a demon, demon chromosome. And the chromosome, so like the symbol for that is it looks very similar to the radiation sign. If I can find a picture, I'll show you. I'll show you the comparison. I'll send you the pictures. So you have that link there, and I think Crowley gave the number of the chromosome. He said it was 33. So you have all these links to 33, and obviously you have the link between JFK, like JFK showing up in the storyline for some reason. So his death, and then in the zombie storyline, like the nuclear testing and like the Manhattan Project and stuff like that. I just thought that was a weird connection because I always wondered like why is JFK actually in the zombie storyline apart from the fact that he was president like during the time of Black Ops 1 occurring. But yeah, I thought that was a weird connection there.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Is it fair to say that Crowley and Jack Parsons are kind of similar to Dr. Mountain Shadowman as the keepers? I don't know if that's fair to say, considering I don't know much about the storyline. Is there a possibility?
Possibly. Yeah, it is a possibility. Basically, like if they're able to harness like the powers of the ether and things like that, then yeah, I'd imagine so. Like I guess they'd have a similar sort of like thought process and like mindset when it came to like controlling the ether, because they're both trying to get different things out of the ether, aren't they? Essentially, so the Shadow Man wants like complete destruction and to bring about the dark ether, and Dr. Mountain basically wants to create peace and wants to create like a completely peaceful world and peaceful realm. But I think for like Jack Parsons and Crowley, those would just be two evil people trying to manipulate things and bring them into this reality. Holy shit.
Yeah.
Wait, I'm going to get run over then. I thought I was going to get run over.
Yeah, exactly. I'm in the trenches, guys.
You are?
I'm in the trenches.
People fucking driving about on motorbikes in your house.
Yeah, it's chaotic, man. Yeah, where were we before that motorbike?
Just talking about Jack Parsons and Aleister Crowley and how those are potentially like reminiscent of representative of Dr. Monty and the Shadow Man.
Yeah, that could be quite interesting. Like Crowley himself using the film and magic and whatnot. So whether that's true or not, I don't know. But I think he's definitely an interesting guy that I think we may have to cover at some point. I don't know. He's probably misunderstood Crowley, but yeah,
Potentially.
that was
But
my
it's like
thoughts.
it would make sense if he was interested in like atomic bomb creation or like nuclear power. Just thinking about it, because it's essentially like creating and destroying reality, because you're pulling apart the atoms of reality. You're ripping things out. That is essentially what dark magic is and black magic, just like destroying reality. It's like chaos magic, isn't it?
Yeah,
Like
chaos. Yeah,
you're just pulling apart like the remnants of this reality, like the building blocks of this reality by going and destroying the atoms. It's similar to like CERN. Like the CERN idea is like a lot of people say that CERN is like a teleportation system. I remember reading the theory as well about how CERN is like it's a teleportation where you can reach places like Mars and things like that in different dimensions. And that is essentially like ripping apart and smashing together particles of this reality in it. So that is essentially chaos magic as well.
order out of chaos, bro. That's what it is.
It is order out of chaos, which is one of the main ideas of the Illuminati. And that is something that is very heavily referenced in the zombie storyline, especially in the early days. So you have a lot of references to the Illuminati. So it's even said that Richtofen was a member of the Illuminati, and he was basically asked by the Illuminati to go into Group 935, who's like the people who create the zombies, and basically study and like try and keep the tabs on things and stuff like that. So it's basically like watching over, and it's all stemmed from the Illuminati and like these secret societies and things like that, just keeping it out, creating these different ideas and stuff like that. It's pretty crazy. That's why I love the idea of like Die Glocke and how that stems and like leads into the zombie storyline. You have like these little conspiracy theories that are just splattered in and like sprinkled into the storyline, like Die Glocke, Majestic 12 and things like that. It's all very fascinating. And then obviously you have like portals and different dimensions and pocket dimensions even. So like two of the maps on Pod Zombies are curved in pocket dimensions. So you have Shadows of Evil, which is basically like created in a city. And there, in that city, they have to perform rituals and things like that. So it's like ritual sacrifices where they're sacrificing people to create like portals essentially, which is similar to what a lot of black magic occultists are rumored to have done. Like they'll sacrifice people to create obviously like portals and different gateways into different realities and different entities in, which is essentially like what happens in the zombie storyline, where you have like the sacrifice of these people bringing like the apothecaries, which are like the evil entities, into the reality, into the dimension. And then you have like the pocket dimension of Mob of the Dead, which is actually based on Alcatraz, which is obviously a real prison. It's actually really fascinating. Like that, the idea of that map is that it actually occurs in purgatory, in hell. So I don't know if you noticed this, but so like different zombies maps and stuff like that, the zombies have different coloured eyes. So for some of them, the zombies have yellow eyes. Yeah. So you've got yellow, you've got orange like red, and then you've got blue as well. So like the yellow is Richtofen, who's brain and is controlling the zombies, and then after that is Samantha. Samantha is the yellow one, and then Richtofen is blue, and then like so for maps like Mob of the Dead and Shadows of Evil, the zombies' eyes are like red, like an orange hue, and that's because potentially it's the devil that's controlling the zombies at that point because they're in this pocket dimension.
Yeah, definitely. And even in your backdrop, the zombies have got yellow eyes. So, I mean, what perfect background to choose.
Yeah. So that's when they are essentially controlled by Samantha, who's like the first controller of the zombies. So Samantha is like basically the main antagonist of the whole story of zombies. Even though she's not like a bad person, she's like made out to be the antagonist because she's like the one controlling the zombies. But she's possessed by the MPD, which is the pyramid, like the corrupting pyramid. It's quite interesting as well. It kind of like reminds me of how, you know, in like with the Saturn time cube and stuff in different places, like the UN meditation room, you have like the black cube and you have the Mecca, which is like the black cube. It's like, what is that story within that reality? I remember listening to a Nick Hinton podcast, and he was talking about how it could be an idea, like, you know, obviously like AI is coming through now and sort of like lean into the idea that AI is like something like it's an ancient alien that's actually been around for a long time, who's trying to corrupt and bring darkness into the world and basically control all of reality. So that's like a cycle, that's like a loop that plays over and over again. But he was talking about how potentially there's like this machine that's been lost, and we're only now like picking up signals of it. So, you know, when people who were like influenced to build computers, I was talking like machine elves and things like that. So that cube is sending out signals, which is telling people and influencing people to be able to create AI and bring it back into reality. And once that's done, this like black cube can come back and like everything spew out of it.
Yeah.
And whatever
definitely.
is hidden within that cube can come out. So it's like a corrupting, like building, like the corruption, like templates and things like that, or whatever's hidden within those things.
Yeah, like the cube exists just to harness energy and to extract it to the world, because everything seems to be connected to that particular geometric shape in general. And just to go back to the ether, I saw some connection within chemistry. I don't know, but I feel like it kind of highlights how mankind perhaps was formed. So in chemistry, they say that an ether is any other class of an organic compound categorized by an oxygen atom bounded to two alkyl groups. And the key thing there being oxygen, which is obviously what we all breathe and what trees give in. So the ether with oxygen, I mean, it's obviously something very profound, that the ether is just the universe that created these elements like oxygen for us to live in. Like in the Bible, obviously, in the beginning, the word was God. And God is essentially just the universe, in my opinion.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. The zombie storyline, I feel like, if it makes you think anything, it makes you think like, what is the reality like that we're living at the minute, and is it like cyclical, or is it just like a reset cycle that just occurs again and again? Which I think like is quite a sort of like an interesting thing to play into. Like the ether is what we exist in within now, but are there other things like beyond this dimension that we're not actually like able to touch and see and smell and things like that?
Yeah, definitely. Are you lagging, or is it just me?
I don't know. Am I lagging?
I don't know. I think it's fine. It's just I just zoned out for a bit.
Sometimes. Is it a bit of delay? Is it a delay?
Yeah.
It
Yeah, I
might be
think
a bit
it
of a
was.
delay, to be fair. Yeah. There's another little thing that's quite interesting as
Yeah.
well within the zombie storyline. So there's the Wolf King, who basically was part of like the fight in the Great War that occurs in the zombie storyline. It's called the Wolf King, And obviously, like, it brought me back to the idea of like feed the wolf. You know that Logan talks about, like, you're feeding the reality, the wolf of reality, whatever it is. And so, like, part of the Easter egg for the map where the Wolf King is, like, his castle that is built, is called the Horizon Tracker. But part of the Easter egg is you've got to feed all these wolves like zombie souls, and that basically like powers them. So it's quite interesting. Like, you have the feed the wolf connection there too, with like the zombies and stuff like that, and then with the wolf statues. But it's all, there's always seems to be references like in the zombie storylines, like giving souls for souls. You know what I mean? Like, giving souls, you sacrifice. And there's a lot of references to like sacrificing things to get things in return.
People
Also,
say,
like, it just makes you think, doesn't it? It just makes you think, like, would that work? Like, obviously, if we talk about sacrifice, people, like celebrities and stuff, sacrificing loved ones to basically get better achievements in life and become successful and more popular.
yeah, many conspiracy theorists believe that's the case, but I feel like it's too powerful for that to be the case, that someone would genuinely think about sacrificing someone. I feel like it's all been predetermined regardless. Like,
Yeah,
you'd be crazy. It's like if I was to say to you and say that you're going to sacrifice someone to succeed, I mean, I'd be called an idiot. So I don't think that's true at all.
because you are an idiot, that's why. Joking, but you're very smart.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah. No, I do agree. I just meant in terms of, like, it always seems to be references to like just sacrificing things to get something in return. But obviously with the zombie storyline, the idea was that they're manipulated into doing it. So could that be a half truth, where, well, not even a half truth, like it's just like a little bit of a truth drop, where like if you sacrifice things in real life, then you'll get something in return. Which I'm not saying anyone should do. I'm not saying that's the best idea. I'm just saying, like, is that a hypothetical theory, and is it something that is actually mechanical within this universe? And is it because we're manipulated into doing it, or what? Who knows?
I think it's something that's just been pre-programmed into us through the mainstream and pop culture, that in order to succeed, you have to sacrifice this and that. And that doesn't necessarily mean you have to sacrifice human beings, but in general, just sacrificing pleasures to success is what I would consider a good sacrifice at the end of the day.
Yeah, like sacrifice today for a better tomorrow.
Yeah.
But that still is sacrifice, though, isn't it? That's still a representation of sacrifice. It's just a different way of doing it. It's not a physical representation. It's not like it's more of like a theoretical version.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas what if you actually sacrifice? Because if everything is energy, then you're essentially giving energy for more energy in the future. Then what if, I don't know, this could get quite deep and technical, but like if you're sacrificing a physical thing for a physical return, you're giving up something's energy for like a bigger return, if you tap my drift.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. There's also like the loading screens of COD zombies and things like that, where you look at them and you're like, oh, that's interesting. You have like the pyramids. So to go back to talking about pyramids on Mars, like one of the loading screens for, I think it's Shangri-La, you have like these pyramids and things like that, and then on the moon you have a pyramid. And there always seems to be references to pyramids. There was also like a massive rumor that it was going to be an Egypt map, and obviously like Egypt is the home of pyramids and things like that. So like, I don't know. It's just fascinating how they've managed to like. I don't know if they've just been through like a lot of subreddits on conspiracy theories and things like that and decided to write a story around that, or if they actually think that's actually what the truth is, if they know that to be the truth. It's all speculation at that point, but it's just really fascinating how deep into it they managed to go. So like with the Ascension loading screen as well, you have, not the Ascension one, the Nuketown, sorry. You have the Sedan crater, which is actually a real place near Area 51. It's been blown out, and that's where they were doing the Manhattan Project. And it looks like there's like a UFO sort of structure, like drilling into the UFO, into the site, into the bomb site, which is quite interesting because like Majestic 12 was obviously like to do with the study of aliens and things like that, and aliens involving themselves in zombies, and really interesting stuff. And I think it lends into like podcasts we've done in the past with obviously like Project Bluebeam and things like that. So I think one of the theories that they purported was that if enough people believed in, so it's a weird phenomenon that they actually discovered. So it's that there's like a certain threshold of people believing in something. So say like aliens. If enough people believe in it, but it's like a certain number. I can't remember what the number is. I don't think they actually specified what number. It's like a certain threshold. If enough people believe in like aliens existing, then they do actually exist in a, like they actually manifest into reality, if that makes sense. So I guess that's like mind manipulation, like energy. It's like it's manifestation on a grand scale, if that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly that. And that's just essentially how this reality works. Manifestation is perhaps the biggest tool to create your own reality at the end of the day. I mean, I don't know if you have anything else to talk about, or we should probably wrap up. What do you think?
Not necessarily. Because I'm fucking, I can't believe these zombies haven't eaten me yet, to be honest. That one's chilling right next to you. I don't look like it's going to eat you anytime soon, so I think you should be good.
Yeah, I agree. And as for the zombie behind me, I think, it's been 45 minutes and he's not been a threat to me, so I feel like I'm safe at this moment in time. See you
No,
guys.
I've gone down. Revive me.
Yeah. It's time to wrap up, guys, and I hope you've enjoyed and liked this part of episode about Call of Duty. It's a bit of nostalgia for Rowan, not for me, as I've never played zombies, but I've learned a lot about the game and how it connects esoterically to modern culture and mythology. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you guys next time.
Peace.
Peace.